Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the March 2025 meeting of the Metropolitan Washington Old Time Radio Club. And I am delighted to see so many of you, great friends. And Michael Henry, particularly lovely to have you at the meeting today. Very exciting. I think that the turnout is reflecting the excitement around you being with us today. So, are there any other visitors? Anybody who hasn't been with us before or rarely been with us? I guess not. Okay. Well, this is.
Well, I've rarely been with you, I think. I just joined a few months back. John Abbott is, I have to credit him for pushing me to join. And so I appreciate that.
Well, and it's wonderful to have new friends joining us and joining the club. That is always an exciting, a collective, exciting moment. A collective cheer goes up from all of us when we get a message from our membership chair, Joni Langdon, saying we have a new member, and we're all going, yay! So welcome to the fold. So I guess without much further ado, I should probably make Frank a co-host so that he can help with the first 15. So there you go. So Frank now has the keys to the kingdom. And we will call on Karl Schadow to get us started.
Very good. All right,
Just let me know when the first slide's up, Frank.
I shall. Oh, wait, here we go. Share sound at the same time here. There.
Yep.
So we've got. Okay, does everybody see? Can I get some thumbs up? Do you see the?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. First slide is up, Carl.
Great. Thank you very much. Tonight, I've chosen one of the earliest, if not maybe the first, superhero with a dual identity. That's Zorro. The real name is Don Diego Vega. He's kind of a pacifist into poetry, but when he changes into the mask and gets that cape and a sword, he turns into Zorro. And his creator is there on the left, Johnson McCulley, who was born in Canada but raised in Illinois and Oregon, where he was a reporter for Illinois newspapers and Oregon newspapers, and he was a prolific pulp writer. In addition to Zorro, he created the characters Samway Thumb, Black Star, and the Crimson Cloud. And Zorro made his first appearance in the Pulp magazine All Story Weekly there on the right, the famous cover that many of you who are familiar with Zorro have probably seen from 1919. So let's move on to the next slide. So to put things into perspective, it's going to give a very brief overview, introduction of Zorro's appearances in the Golden Age, basically 1920 all the way up to the late 1950s. Of course, I had mentioned in the pulps the Curse of Capistrano is in the Pulp magazine, and that was a 5-weekly serial, and it really didn't generate a whole lot of interest until Douglas Fairbanks and his United Artists made the film in 1920, The Mark of Zorro, one of the great silent films of the 1920s, very, very famous. It's still talked about today, and that really got Zorro off on track and got McCulley to write more Zorro pulp stories. And there's several films done in the 20s and also in the 1930s with the Republic serials. Radio came around in 1940 with The Adventures of Zorro by Aerogram Corporation out of Hollywood, and we'll talk about that in a minute. In the comics, 1948 was the first appearance of Zorro in hit comics. number 55, a story which was published by Quality Comics. And then, of course, many of us who grew up in the 50s and the 60s know Guy Williams very well. Before he was on Lost in Space, of course, he was Zorro in that great Walt Disney production, which is still in syndication today in many areas, not only in the U.S., but around the world. So as we move on to the next slide, radio adaptations of Zorro. Well, I looked and looked and looked, and as I had mentioned, Zorro was first published in 1919, and then with the movie in 1920, you'd think, boy, this would be great for radio. I looked and looked, and I couldn't find anything for 20 years. Doesn't mean anything wasn't out there, but I couldn't find anything. And in 1940, a very interesting year for Zorro, the Aerogram Corporation out of Hollywood announced that it was going to syndicate The Mark of Zorro based on the film and Macaulay's Pulp Adventures. Macaulay was going to write the scripts, and we have a couple of scripts that were based on the movie. I'm not sure if this series actually made it on air. I'm still looking to see if it did, but at least we have 2 scripts, and it was definitely a syndicated series for the juvenile audience. Also that year, the Mark of Zorro film for the sound, and you've probably remember this. If you were at the meeting with Frank Morgan when he talked about Tyrone Power and Linda Darnell started The Mark of Zorro in 1940. Great film, very widely publicized, and it debuted in Cincinnati in November of 1940, with Tyrone Power being in Cincinnati, his hometown, and they actually did excerpts of the film on radio during the Kate Smith Hour. There was a 1-minute blurb on YouTube regarding that. I haven't found any audio or scripts. I'm still looking for that, so that one's still on the burner. Then a few years go by, and we get another one-shot, Mark of Zorro on Hollywood Star Time. That was an anthology series of many different movies that were adapted for radio. In that particular episode from February 1946, Cornell Wilde starred as Zorro. Then we move on to the next year, The Adventures of Zorro on KFWB, the Hollywood station owned by Warner Brothers. And there was an audition series every week starting in June of 1947. Different programs would be auditioned, and on your preview theater of the year, October 24th, 1947, was The Adventures of Zorro. Now, some of you, if you had listened to the big broadcast a few weeks ago, heard this. And so today's presentation of Zorro is kind of a follow-up to that as well. That production on KFWB was produced by Micheal Gertz, and and that was a half-hour show. And the one I'm going to talk about today is The Adventures of Zorro, which was produced by the Micheal Gertz Agency, first released in 1947 or publicized in 1947, and it may have run until 1950. And into the next slide. So the 2 folks who were highly involved in this, Micheal Gertz, he was a talent agent in Hollywood. He was actually a championship wrestler in college, made his way to Hollywood in 1932, was involved in the film industry, and became a major talent agent out there for several years. A couple of his clients were Herbert Rawlinson and Catherine Craig, who were involved both in films and radio. During the late 1940s and into the early 1950s, there was a series of agreements between Mr. Gertz and Johnson McCulley for the rights to Zorro, including film, TV, radio, etc. Not only did Gertz produce Zorro, but he also had a couple of other radio programs, 2 Nights of the Road, which was about a couple of hobos, and Wine for Everyone, which is kind of a wine interview program. Various wine aficionados were interviewed. So not only did Gertz do Zorro, but he also did a couple of other programs. As his director, he chose Robert M. Light, who had extensive experience as an actor, writer, director, producer in radio. Light started his career in entertainment as an actor on Broadway and also radio in New York in the early 30s, moved to Hollywood. He became an actor for Warner Brothers and also was involved in radio. He was involved in the Armed Forces radio service, both in London and Los Angeles during the war. He was president of Command Radio Productions following the war That's the group of individuals from armed forces who joined together, including Elliot Lewis, to form shows such as Voyage of the Scarlet Queen. Let's see, what else do we have here? And then we'll move right on. And I'm going to introduce the episode I've chosen is actually number 9. There's only a couple of episodes that are extant out of this series. It's called Imprisoned. And it was originally broadcast maybe in 47 or 49, and it stars I. Averback. Okay, Frank, you can go ahead and cue that up, please.
En garde, senor. Fight, weakling. Fight, coward. Fight. That for robbing a poor man of his bread.
Look, senor, on the forehead, the mark of Zorro.
The Adventures of Zorro, the mysterious black masked rider who slashes his mark on all that is evil, the letter Z, for Zorro, champion of the poor and the oppressed. Black and stormy night in Reina de Los Angeles, and none except those with urgent business dare leave their haciendas. Only Captain Ramon's soldiers are about, in unusually great numbers. For it is rumored that Zorro rides again. Zorro, who is in reality the wealthy, lazy Don Diego Vega, but whose true identity is known only to the priest, Padre Felipe. In the tavern on the plaza, all is serene and quiet until...
Landlord, some wine.
Si, Sergeant Gonzalez. Si.
It is a night to give a man a thirst.
An evil night, Sergeant. They are saying in the Pueblo that the Senor Zorro is abroad again.
Zorro, eh? Mr. Fox. A cutthroat, a thief.
They say he does much good for the people.
Good. Bah. Because he wears a mask and flashes a pretty blade, he gets a reputation for bravery.
He uses that blade, they tell me, to carve the letter Z on the forehead of his foe. The mark of Zorro, they are calling it.
I would not know about that. Senor Zorro knows better than to show himself before a superior swordsman like myself.
I hear there is a reward.
You snatched the very words from my lips. The governor has offered a handsome reward for the fellow's capture. And once I meet him...
Watch out, senor.
Did I startle you, senora?
If you did, Don Diego, it was because you entered on the heels of the storm. Your own energy would hardly startle any man.
Yes, it's true that I do not have much of a reputation for riding and fighting. My taste runs more to words of wisdom or music or poetry.
Meal, mush, and goat's milk.
Perhaps. Get me a pot of honey, landlord.
Si, senor.
I was just saying, Caballero, that I was hoping to meet the notorious Senor Zorro soon, so that I may claim the reward offered by the governor.
Well, no doubt this fellow is sincere in his purpose. He robs none except officials who have stolen from the poor. Let him have his day, Sergeant.
I would rather have the reward.
Earn it, then. Capture him.
Here is your pot of honey, senor.
Thank you, landlord. Well, good night to you.
Music and poetry, huh? But I suppose he has the right if he enjoys it. If I had his riches, I would not need the reward I will get for the capture of Zorro.
Just what will you do with the reward, Sergeant Gonzalez?
Well, first I will... But what?
Senor Zorro at your service.
By the saints, Senor Zorro. You have come to surrender?
I am on business, senor. 4 days ago, you brutally beat a native. I have come to avenge him. On guard, Sergeant.
But what?
Fight, senor.
All right, you cutthroat. Thief! Stand back while I draw my blade.
Oh, then.
Sergeant Gonzalez, someone come.
We have Senor Zorro here.
So, you shout for help, senor. All right. I will go now, but I leave you with this. Till we meet again, Sergeant.
Sergeant, are you hurt?
Your forehead. Indeed, the mark of Zorro. Senorita Lolita.
Senor Zorro, you shouldn't have come here.
Oh, Senorita, I am too weak to resist even one moment in your presence. My heart is filled with love.
Senor Zorro, and I love you.
Oh, is that cause for such sadness?
It is not because of my love that I am sad. It is because Don Diego is coming for his answer tonight.
And have you decided to become his bride, Senorita?
I must. The governor's men have taken away almost everything from my father's house. And we are poor. And the marriage with the wealthy Don Diego would restore my father's fortune.
I wish I were an honest man and could claim you openly.
But it is not as if you were an ordinary thief. You steal, yes, but only to give to the poor.
But my task is not yet done, Senorita. I feel called upon to finish it.
Then finish it. And may the saints guard you. I will always love you.
But you've never seen me without my mask. I may be ugly.
I love you.
Disfigured, Senorita.
I love you.
But your chance to be a great lady, your father and his fortunes, Don Diego.
I do not know what to do, senor. But God is good. He will help me. What is that?
Probably Capitan Ramon and his soldiers. Sergeant Gonzalez no doubt gave them my trail.
Then you must go at once.
But I shall return. Steady, Blanco. Until later. Buenas noches, senorita.
There he goes! After him, men! So, the beautiful senorita and the common highwayman. But why do you do not answer, my pretty senorita? Perhaps you do not know that the punishment for helping a highwayman to escape is imprisonment, eh? Of course. One might overlook if you would consent to marry me.
Marry you. I would rather die.
Pretty words from the daughter of a man who is almost ruined.
My father, Don Carlos, will not be ruined. For I am about to accept the hand of Don Diego Vega.
I see. You would not marry an honorable soldier, but you would sell yourself for your father's fortune.
Senor.
Perhaps before you and I are through, senorita, you will be glad to accept my hand in marriage. Buenas noches, senorita.
Lolita, ma'am. There you are. I see Don Diego's horse approaching. Are you ready, my child?
Yes, father.
Welcome, Don Diego, to my poor hacienda.
Oh, thank you, Don Carlos. Oh, dear. It's a long distance. But it wearies me to ride a horse.
Good evening, Don Diego.
Good evening, Senorita Lolita. I trust you made up your mind.
I have, Don Diego. I shall be honored to be your wife.
Oh, that's settled then. It will be rather a bore, I expect, the ceremony and the wedding feast and all that sort of thing.
Senor.
However, I shall tell my father and he can make the arrangements. They can send word in to me when... Why, where has she gone? Have I displeased her in any way?
You must excuse Lolita, senor. She would rather be wooed, I take it, in the conventional fashion. Perhaps a guitar beneath her window.
A guitar? I like only to listen. I know nothing of such things.
It might be an excellent idea to regard the senorita as if you adored her. Do not speak of marriage, only of love.
I fear that's beyond me. And yet I must try, of course. I may go in and see the senorita now.
Ah, but wait a moment. Who comes here?
Is this the house of Don Carlos Perudo and his daughter?
I am Don Carlos.
I have orders to place you and your daughter under military arrest.
Arrest? But who gave such orders?
His Honor, Captain Raymond.
What is the charge?
Treason and aiding the state's enemies.
Preposterous.
I have my orders.
Nonsense, my man. Just tell the Capitan that Don Diego countermands his orders.
I cannot do that, senor.
Oh, then I suppose I shall have to fight you. By the saints, what a nuisance.
That will not be necessary, senor. You might soil the frills on your cuffs. I am ready to go. Are you coming, Father?
One more wine over here, please.
You are very generous to open your house to us, Don Alejandro.
Sons of my friends are always welcome to my house, senor.
But where is your son, Don Diego, tonight?
He is fatigued and has retired for the night.
Fatigued? At this early hour? Oh, but a thousand pardons, senor. I should not have laughed.
It is quite all right, Pedro. I myself wish he had more life in him, more spirit.
It often saddens my old heart to be father of a mere dreamer of dreams. But don't let me keep you. Go on with your merrymaking.
Senores. By the saints, it is Zorro.
Capture him. There is a large reward on his head.
Wait, senores. I have something to say to you. At least hear me out.
One moment, caballeros. Let us hear what Senor Zorro has to say.
Thank you, senor. I come to urge you to live up to your noble names. Band yourselves together and drive the thieving politicians from your land, senores. You seek adventure, do you not? Here is adventure aplenty, fighting oppression. Even this night, a great injustice has been done. You may have heard what has happened to Don Carlos and his daughter, the Senorita Lolita. We know they are innocent of any treason, and yet they have been taken to prison and locked up with common thieves. And all on the whim of Capitan Ramon.
By the saints, Don Carlos and the lovely Lolita in prison?
Even while you sit here drinking wine and making merry, I urge you, senores, make your stand.
What do you say to this, Don Alejandro?
I am in sympathy with Senor Zorro, caballeros.
Would you lead us, Senor Zorro?
Si, senores.
Senor
We're right. Senor Zorro, you have my full support.
What shall we do, Senor Zorro?
Let this remain a secret. In the morning, be ready to band yourselves together and ride. I shall send word when the time comes. Adios, senores.
In just a moment, we'll look ahead to the next exciting episode in the Adventures of Zorro.
The trap is baited, Gonzalez.
With the Senorita Lolita as bait.
Tomorrow you will see Senor Zorro unmasked.
Be sure to be with us next time as Captain Ramon waits to trap his quarry. Another thrill-packed adventure of Zorro. The Adventures of Zorro was written for radio by Maria Little and directed by Robert M. Light. This program, transcribed in Hollywood, is a Micheal production.
Okay, so we move on from the transcribed syndicated series to the two stars, Hy Averback and Isabel Jewell. Where I'm mentioning KFWB quite often in this first 15 today. Hy Averback was an announcer and an actor at KFWB in the 30s and into the early 1940s before he went into service in World War II, and he was involved in the Armed Forces Radio Service. After the war, he became an announcer and got a big break doing announcing duties for both Jack Paar and Bob Hope, and he would also become one of the main character actors on radio in Hollywood on such shows as Family Theater, Suspense, Escape, and Sweeney and March, and also Jack Benny. The lovely Lolita was played by Isabel Jewell, mostly a film actress in such motion pictures as Ceiling Zero, Marked Woman, She Had to Choose, and also she was Emmy Slattery in Gone with the Wind. On radio, she was in various anthologies, including Lux and the Screen Guild Theater series, and also in The Whistler and the Story of Dr. Kildare. As we move on to the next slide, in 1947, Micheal advertised The Fabulous Adventures of Zorro in the Radio Daily Shows of Tomorrow, which was one of the main publications where radio producers could publicize their programs. And the type is pretty small there, but they list many of the additional cast members who I'm still working on, trying to pair up with the individual actors who were in this transcribed syndicated series. Irving Getz wrote the theme. Irving was Mitchell's brother. I'm not sure who the organist was on the series, but the announcer was Gil Warren. He was one of the major announcers at KFWB at that time. More publicity in the radio daily shows of tomorrow, both 1947 and 49. You can see that obviously he proposed, Micheal Gertz proposed different ways to publicize it. He's offering the program as 15 minutes, 3 or 5 times weekly in 47. For 49, he doesn't say, and he says that there's 1 episode available plus 22 complete scripts. And also, if you notice that during the episode, I mentioned that it was either 1947 or 49 as the actual audio when it was recorded. I'm not sure. I'm still trying to figure that out. If you notice there on the right from the 1949 version of the shows of tomorrow, it said that the program was produced in January of 1949. So I'm not sure if this was the 47 edition or the 49 audition. And as we move on, there is other audio available of both the KFWB audition and also the first episode of the series at archive.org, the Old Time Radio Researchers, Radio Echoes, Old Time Radio Downloads. I want to alert you that in those last 2 websites, they include audio of the TV series that was produced on LPs by Disney in 1957. So there's some confusion about exactly how many actual radio episodes there are. I just want to let you know that there's only 2 episodes of the Micheal Gertz 15-minute transcribed syndicated series, and then the KFWB, and all the other audio that you may see on some of these websites are actually condensed TV versions that were put on LPs and sold throughout the country, and they were very popular in the late 1950s. I haven't found any scripts so far, but I'm still working on trying to locate some skips of that series. So what about the critique? I thought the production was excellent. I thought this was a very excellent series, excellent casting, direction, and especially the sound effects. I'm not sure who the sound effects artists were, but they certainly have perfected the creation of that On Guard, the Zorro Z on somebody's forehead or wall or whatever. I thought that was excellent sound effects. The one thing I was curious about in the 1947 KFWB half-hour audition, Micheal Gertz has a full orchestra, but in this particular syndicated series, he has an organ, which at times I think was a little overbearing. But due to budget constraints, I'm sure that it would have worked out fine. The only other thing I would add is that in addition to the crew and High Averback, that he listed the full cast credits. What about additional sources for Zorro? There was a chapter written in Jack French's and Dave Siegel's Radio Range, the Range book from 2014 that has all about radio westerns. 1998, Sandra Curtis wrote the official history of Zorro, but only did not include any of the radio programs that I talked about, except for one BBC series from the 90s. There is Zorro.com that's headed up by John Gertz. John is Micheal Gertz's son. Sandra Curtis is John's wife. And also that last website, Bold Venture Press, they have reprinted all of the original Zorro pulp magazine stories in 6 wonderful volumes. And to end the talk this evening, I have included the cover of the first volume, one there by Bold Venture Press of the Pulp Ventures of Zorro. That's me, yours truly on the left. If you have any questions, you can either ask them now or email me. Thank you very much. Oh, before anybody talks, I always forget the acknowledgments. I want to thank Frank for running the slides, John Abbott for the audio, John Gertz, who provided the photos of both his father and Johnson McCulley, and also a fellow pulp enthusiast, Bill Lampkin, who provided much information on Johnson McCulley. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Karl. That was just terrific. I was riveted, and I'm sure all of us were. Does anyone have any questions for Hank? Just off the cuff. Brian.
Oh, I was just going to mention, because Carl had said something in the beginning. I realized that Zorro is one of the early hero characters, but I don't believe he is the first because I believe the Scarlet Pimpernel predates Zorro. And so I think
That's
that was
correct. Yeah.
the character. And I just wanted to mention that during the Great Depression, Johnston McCulley, in order to make extra money, continued to write for the pulp magazines. And as writers did in those days, they would copy their most famous characters. And so Johnston McCulley created a character called the Whirlwind, which is exactly like Zorro. I think he only wrote about 8 short stories of it. And it was reprinted, all of them, a few years ago. I believe you could still get the book that it was in. It was called Alias the Whirlwind. But if you read that, it's exactly like reading Zorro. So it's like, why he didn't just write new Zorro stories, I have no idea. But he just decided to copy his character and create a different character. But that was it, you know.
Yes, thank you, Brian. Yes, I should have mentioned that Zorro was one of the earliest, and not the first, super dual identity superhero. And I remember you telling me about that, Alias the Whirlwind. You know, all through the 30s and 40s, McCulley was still writing, you know, Zorro and many other characters. So, thank you.
Yes.
Other questions, perhaps?
Who was again the first, you know, the first cartoon before Zorro that you just mentioned?
The Scarlet Pimpernel.
Scarlet?
The Scarlet Pimpernel.
So it's a woman?
No.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yes. No, it's not a woman. It's a man, but it's written by a woman, Baroness Orczy, very famous author, Baroness Orczy. Yeah.
But the character's name was Scarlet Pimpernel, but he was a man. The character was a man.
Yes.
That's
and he
correct.
was not a comic. He was not a cartoon.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, someone could do a whole presentation just on the Scarlet Pimpernel.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
Don't suggest that to Michael.
That's your next one,
Frank will
Carl.
try to hit me up for that. All of my 15 minutes I could turn into an hour.
Well,
So,
yeah,
anyhow.
and that's a full-fledged presentation.
Absolutely.
Yes, great stuff. Costumes and everything. Rob Farr could probably do a presentation on that as well. Come on, Leslie Howard, gimme. But getting back to Zorro, other questions, curiosities, thoughts? Wow, quiet bunch tonight.
Well, was the original novel called The Bells of Capistrano rather than The Mark of
The Curse of
Zorro?
Capistrano. It was The Curse of Capistrano.
Okay.
That was the original title in 1919 of the first pulp magazine story was The Curse of Capistrano.
Curse of Capistrano.
It was the Bells of
Right.
St. Crinians. But that's film, not radio. Well, thank you so much, Carl. You never cease to amaze with your, with the research you're doing and continue to do. It's just, we are great benefactors of your knowledge and research. So thank you very, very much. And you did give your email address, so people want to get a hold of you later on.
Certainly, yeah.
Fair game. Thank you so much. It's wonderful. And then now we move on to the mysterious moment of the evening, because no one other than our quiz mistress Sally Stevens knows who's actually going to be delivering the questions to the quiz. And so, Sally, would you like to enlighten us now, please?
No.
Okay, well then we don't have to look at the poll because, you know, share screen, who cares?
Just kidding. This week, you get me.
Yay!
Your video quiz queen.
Good.
Prepare yourself, class.
Good. So we seem to have some weird background noise. Well, it seems to have gone away now. All right, Sally. So I will make you a co-host, so you now have the keys to the kingdom.
Excellent.
All righty there. Hang on to your hats. The teacher's back. Take it away.
All right, class. You've had a break. You had a rest. You're welcome. But I'm back. So get your pencils out. Get your paper out. And it's time for a quiz. Because just because I might not have been here doesn't mean I don't expect you to do your homework. And don't worry, it'll all be reflected on your report cards, which, yes, in fact, are going home in, wait, let me see, about 2.5 weeks. So prepare yourselves. Ooh. Ooh, there's 2 things here. I could get real creative if I wanted, but I will only launch 1 poll. We are doing our quiz on 9 names and a place. I will launch the poll. I will read the questions. You may answer the questions in the poll faster than I read. That's fine. And then we will do the answers after our main program. Launching poll. Okay. All right. Number 1. Wilms Herbert played Sergeant Otis on Richard Diamond, Private Detective. What was Sergeant Otis's surname? A. Dum Dum. B. Edelman. C. Ludlum. D. Feldman. What was Sergeant Otis's surname on Richard Diamond, Private Detective? Number 2. The Lone Ranger had several announcers over the years. Who of the following was not an announcer for the series? A. Fred Foy. B. Bob Height. C. Brace Beamer. D. J. Michael. Number 3. Dr. Kildare practiced at which of the following hospitals? A. Hoskins Hospital. B. Boston General. C. Blair General. D. Central Hospital. Where did Dr. Kildare practice medicine? Number 4. Several played Pancho on the Cisco Kid. But whom of the following did not? A. Harry Lang. B. Mel Blanc. C. Lou Merrill. D. Parley Bear. Which did not play Poncho on the Cisco Kid? Number 5. Classically trained actor John Todd played Tonto on The Lone Ranger. But what role did he occasionally play as a fill-in on The Green Hornet? A. Bill Gunnigan, city editor. B. Mike Axford, reporter. C. Ed Lowry, reporter. D. Jim Higgins, police commissioner. Classically trained actor John Todd played Tonto on The Lone Ranger, but occasionally filled in as whom on The Green Hornet? Number 6. Before she was Samantha's befuddled aunt on Bewitched, this actress was a regular in Old Time Radio's Mr. Peepers. Who was she? A. Agnes Moorehead. B. Marion Lorne. C. Sylvia Picker. D. Elvia Allman. Before she was Samantha's befuddled aunt on Bewitched, this actress was on Mr. Peepers. Number 7. Audiences were surprised when this actor appeared on screen in Love Story without a hairpiece. Who was this matinee idol who starred in Old Time Radio's Meet Mr. McNutley? A. John Garfield. B. John Marley. C. Chester Morris. D. Ray Milland. Which matinee idol starred in Meet Mr. McNutley? Number 8. This popular kids program is one of those that began on TV and moved to radio. Which one is it? A. Tom Corbett, Space Cadet. B. Smilin' Ed's Gang. C. Paul Winchell and Jerry Mahoney Show. D. Planet Man. This popular kids program began on TV and moved to radio. Which one was it? Number 9. Hubert Updike was a character on The Alan Young Show. Who played Hubert? A. Arnold Stang. B. Hans Conried. C. Alan Reed. D. Jim Backus. Who played Hubert on the Alan Young Show? Number 10. On Barry Craig, confidential investigator, who played the lead, Barry Craig? A. Wally Mayer. B. William Gargan. C. Jeff Chandler. D. Robert Rockwell. Who played Barry Craig on Barry Craig, confidential investigator? Okay. I am closing my window, but going to leave the poll running because I can't see if people are done with it or not. And I will mess it all up if I close it. So I'm going to minimize it and let it keep running in the background while our main program is going. So if you are still working on it, you still have time to finish class. And we'll get the answers after the program. Stay tuned.
Thank you, Miss Stevens.
Miss Stevens, I hit submit after the first question and my poll disappeared. What should I do?
Well, Mr. Farr, that is what we call a technical error, and I would really have to call my IT department to reset your test, and then you would be able to go back in, and I'd have to give them your student test ID and your name and your password, and then they would be able to reset your test so it wouldn't be a test irregularity.
Well, you'd have to read all the
However,
questions again.
I can't do that because I am not a test. I am not a testing coordinator, and this is not a state sanctioned exam. And unfortunately, I cannot do that. So I'm sorry, you are just out of luck.
Well, if I may, Ms. Stevens, not to contradict our expert teacher, you could try, Rob Farr, to look at the thread across your screen. I don't know if you're on a laptop or a tablet.
Laptop.
And but you have a list of controls: mute, stop video, participants, chat, etc.
Yeah.
It may be down the side of your screen depending on the size of your monitor. But if usually there is a circle with 3 white dots in it, and it says more, or words to that effect. If you tap that,
yes,
you should bring up polls/quizzes, which are is the second option. If you can try tapping that, and I believe the poll will come back. If not, your host.
I don't see it, so I will take Miss Stevens' recommendation and pound sand.
All right. Well, we know that you
I'm
would have
very sorry.
skewed the results, but thank you for asking the questions. There are no dumb questions, right, Miss Stevens?
That's very true, and that is why I encourage paper pencil.
Like
I do
mine.
encourage paper pencil, Mr. Farr. I would in the future encourage having paper pencil available for all tests and homework assignments, because the dog ate my homework or the computer didn't save does not fly in my class. Let me tell you.
All right. Well, moving right along to our main program, Michael Henry is our presenter. Before Frank does his inimitable introduction to our speaker, I understand that there is a PowerPoint I'm assuming, Michael Henry, that you know how to share screen
Yes.
if I make you a co-host. All right,
Yes,
very
if
good.
you can show cause I can, yes, I can share my
I
screen.
will be more than happy to do that. And take it away, Frank.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, our speaker tonight is Michael Henry. Mike was introduced to old-time radio in the 1980s when he was listening to KSFO in San Francisco. He's been a fan ever since. When he moved to the DC area in 1991, Mike was listening to the big broadcast and learned about our club. He joined in 1993 and served as a program chairman for several years. Mike is with the Mass Media and Culture Collections at the University of Maryland. And tonight, Mike will discuss one of his favorites from the radio history collections at the University of Maryland, the program Vox Pop. So Mike, please tell us about Vox Pop.
Thank you very much. Let's see. Give me a moment while I get my screen ready. And so, thank you, Frank, and it's great to be here, and thank you for inviting me to speak. It's great to see so many old friends, and I particularly want to give special mention to Marcia Bush. I especially miss Mark and Marcia. So Frank mentioned that I have had a lifelong love of radio history, and there are three factors that have contributed to my love of old-time radio. One, just the sheer entertainment value of comedy programs and drama programs, mystery programs, music programs. Two, the use of the imagination. I have a very active imagination, and I enjoy being required to use my imagination to enjoy these programs. And believe me, I enjoyed using my imagination in envisioning Zorro slashing his Z into people's foreheads tonight. But the third factor that really appeals for me, that old-time radio has this appeal to me, is that fact of it being a historical document, of really documenting the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and giving us a window, an oral window into that time period. So, as Frank mentioned, I work at the University of Maryland for a collection that is devoted to the history of radio and television broadcasting. We have personal paper collections of veteran broadcasters, scripts, magazines, photographs, audio recordings, film and video recordings. And one of my favorite programs is a show called Vox Pop, and I will now give you my slideshow. So, Vox Pop was a radio quiz program that was on the air from 1932 to 1948. It was considered one of the earliest radio quiz programs. It originally started in Houston, Texas in 1932 as a local station on local station KTRH. But by 1935, it had become so popular and successful that it moved to NBC, where it remained for 4 years on the network. In 1939, it moved to CBS, and then 1947 moved to ABC before going off the air in 1948. Now, in its early years, Vox Pop was hosted for its entire history was hosted by this gentleman, Parks Johnson. Now, he was one of the creators and really the chief host for the entire 16-year run of the show. And it's his papers that we have. In 1997, his son, Bill, gave us his Parks Johnson's papers, which included recordings, photographs, business correspondence, listener mail, promotional material, and really at the core of it was a 400-page diary documenting each of these 726 broadcasts. And you will see some of this documentation throughout this presentation. And I'm excited to show it to you because as I said before, this show is one of those shows, thanks to Parks Johnson, has given an incredible insight into that period, the 30s and 40s, and the shows. He had several co-hosts over time. Jerry Belcher when he was in Texas and Hollywood and NBC. Wally Butterworth when he was with NBC and CBS. And then Warren Hall, and many of you may know from television, from Strike It Rich. He was from CBS years and the ABC. And over the years, I don't have any photographs of them, but over the years, when either Parks Johnson or Warren Hall went on vacation in the summer months, they would be joined by the one remaining, Parks Johnson or Warren Hall would be joined by a variety of guest hosts. And one of their most prominent and most frequent guest hosts was Ed Sullivan. So we actually have photographs and some recordings with Ed Sullivan as the co-host on this show. So early in the show's history, from 1932 to 1940, there was predominantly a man on the street program where they interviewed people on the street, asking them trivia questions about common things they meant, about literature and history and geography and farm life and agriculture and mythology. And they would also ask them questions of a relevant topic. We have a recording from January of 1935, which was probably an audition program to attract a national sponsor before they went to New York in NBC. And the question they asked was people's opinion about the Hoffman trial, which was going on at the time, the man accused of kidnapping the Lindbergh baby. And so listening to that, you get a real good snapshot of the culture at that time. So in this photograph, you see one of their since they were with NBC from 1935 to 1939, they frequently broadcast from the lobby of the RCA building in New York City. And so here's a banner, Vox Pop. They were sponsored by Kentucky Club Tobacco. And you can see, and a lot of these are among the 2,000 photographs that are in the collection showing the actual radio broadcasts in progress. And so you see Parks Johnson and their guest, who was a baseball player of the time, and microphones, NBC microphones. And there's a gentleman right in the back, right in front of the banner, where you only see the top of his head, but that's their announcer at the time, Graham McNamee. So many of you may know Graham McNamee was a prominent and famous announcer, especially of sports broadcasting at the time. And the picture on the right, they're at the New York World's Fair in the second season of the fair, and with Electro, the robot Electro that was featured there. They were actually there for the 1939 season as well, and they broadcast from the NBC, the RCA Pavilion, since they were with NBC. And at that time, although we don't have recordings, they actually participated in some of the early television broadcasts that were broadcast on a regular schedule from the New York World's Fair. And so we have listings, but alas, no recordings, or I think we may have one photograph. But that's another little footnote in their history, their legacy. Now, by 1940, they actually branched out of New York City. While they were in New York City, they broadcast from restaurants and theaters and other locations and hotel lobbies. That was one of their major sources for finding men and women on the street, was hotel lobbies. But by 1940, they started branching out and became less of a man on the street program and more of a highly structured interview program, going to a particular location a week ahead of the broadcast, interviewing prospective guests to be interviewed on the air, and highlighting whatever location or city or activity that was at that location. So when World War II began, they were one of an early show to devote their broadcasts to the war effort. And they spent the rest of the war visiting locations around the country and Canada devoted to the war effort, visiting army camps, army hospitals, defense plants, anywhere where the war effort was taking place on the home front. So you can see in this photograph, this publicity photograph, by 1944, they had traveled about, between 1940 and 1944, they had traveled about over 200,000 miles in traveling from place to place, from small towns and big towns and everywhere in between. And it's an incredible achievement that they were able, especially during wartime, and with wartime restrictions and travel restrictions, were able to accomplish that. Now, of course, the radio's role in promoting and boosting morale was their main contribution to the effort, to the war effort. And there are actually others at the time who were commenting on the role that radio was playing in promoting the war effort and boosting morale. One of these was a New York University psychologist by the name of Louis Berg. And in 1943, January of 1943, he wrote, "Entertainment Programs and Wartime Morale." And I thought I would share a few comments he made in this publication, because it's very relevant to the work that Vox Pop was doing. He says, "It's not enough that planes and tanks and ships are manufactured in fabulous numbers. It's not enough that millions of men are mobilized and trained to fight with modern weapons. It is not enough that our leadership ranks with the best in the world and can formulate the required strategy for victory. Battles and wars are not won by the ability to fight, but by the will to fight. Have we the will to fight? That is a bold question, but a necessary one. For the will to fight continues to exist only where the morale building process is continuous and thorough. Military life programs have brought a new type of listening into radio. Not by amusement, not by the presence of big name talent, not by dramatic technique, but simply by the public desire to know its army down to the last detail. Ours is a civilian army, and this is a war of peoples. Our people, on the home and production fronts, can strive, and with maximum effectiveness, only when they understand clearly the activities they are supporting. By fostering sound understanding of the life and labors of the American soldier, his equipment, his preparation, his skills, his reverses, and his successes, Army life programs build cooperation and identification between the nation's civilian and military armies. So as you listen to the recordings I'll be playing for you tonight, the interviews, I want you to just remember some of those comments that Berg is saying here about the role that these Army life programs like Vox Pop are doing. I want you to listen for any mentions of the labors of the American soldier, his equipment, his preparation, his skills, and his reverses, and his successes. So as you're listening, think of some of those comments, and you can answer the question: was Vox Pop successful in making this connection and this between the nation's civilian and military armies? So, as I mentioned, it was very typical for Vox Pop to arrive at a location a week ahead of the scheduled broadcast date, and pre-select dozens of potential interview subjects. So here, what you see here on the left are two of the directors of the show meeting with prospective interview subjects at a military base. And on the right is one of the questionnaires that they distributed at these locations. And you could see here how detailed they were. They're asking the name, the address, whether they're married, what some of their most interesting experiences are. And so we actually have several of these questionnaires which give incredible insight into the war effort and the people who contributed to it. So tonight since tonight is March 14th, I am going to present to you a broadcast from March 15th, 1943, 82 years ago. And so in the interest of time, I'm not going to be presenting all the names you see here, but I did want to mention something Now, you'll see on the left a page in Parks Johnson's notebook devoted to the broadcast we'll be listening to tonight, the March 15th, 1943 broadcast from Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C. And you'll see here, it may be easier for some of you, and depending on the monitor you have, he's very detailed. He gives the location, the date, the hotel they stayed at when they traveled there, the personnel who helped put the broadcast on behind the scenes, the men and the nurse who were on air, interviewed on air, their home address, and a few notations about who they were, and at the bottom, details of the cocktail party they went to the night before. And on the right, you see the list of the people that we will be hearing from tonight with some of Parks Johnson's notations. For instance, the first one, Corporal Aaron Murray Salkin, he notes he's blind. Harry Anderson, leg off, he's an amputee. Nancy Gillihan, battalion nurse, and Hugh Alexander, colored. Now, that's an interesting factor with this notebook, is that Parks Johnson was very impressed by the role that African Americans played during the war and wanted to make efforts to really remember those and note those. So he used a term common at the time, colored, to note the African American men and women they interviewed. And now, all this time later, I can go back now and identify, because of that notation, I can go back now and have identified all the African American men and women they interviewed so we can get their perspective on the war effort and on American culture at the time. So, and another thing I would like you to note, in addition to the other questions about morale and radio's role in boosting morale during the war, is also remember, put this in context, put this broadcast in context. This is March of 1943. This is less than a year and a half after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The wounds are still very fresh from that. The war, our involvement in the war, we've been fighting in the Pacific. You'll hear many comments about that. And we can look back 82 years later and with hindsight to know how the war ended. But the men and women we're going to be meeting tonight, they couldn't do that. The war was still on. The war was still raging. And there, you get a sense of some of the urgency and intensity of what they were experiencing. So that's going to reflect how they felt about themselves and their friends, and also how they felt about the enemy. So keep that in mind as we listen to these interviews. Now, the first one is Private Harry Anderson of Madera, California. Now, you'll notice here is Parks Johnson with a microphone in his hand, a CBS microphone. You notice, and he's standing over Harry Anderson. This is the amputee. You'll see he's sitting in a wheelchair with his amputation on a leg board there. And you'll notice that Parks Johnson is not holding a portable microphone or a hand mic. He's basically grabbed the stand mic and is pulling it over, because apparently they didn't have a hand mic available for him to use. So when you listen to that, you'll note that. So I'm going to play that now.
Okay, Mo. All right, now, fellas, where's my hand microphone? I'll have to use this microphone? All right. First of all, folks, is a 24-year-old son of World War I veteran. This fighting American landed on a beach in North Africa, and with his outfit, he fought his way to the outskirts of Casablanca. And then, but let's hear from him. Folks, I want you to know, from Madera, California, Private Harry B. Anderson. Well, there ain't much I can say. Yes, there is, Harry. There's a lot you can say. You're the only one from your family in the service? Yes, sir. No, I have a brother that's in the Navy. Brother in the Navy? Yes. I bet your dad's proud of his fighting son. Yeah, but only one thing. He went through the war and never got a scratch, and he told my brother and I we can't even take care of ourselves after we get out under his wing. Was your brother hurt too? Well, he was, but he's all right. Oh, he's all right now. That's good. Well, say, where were you fighting when you were wounded, Harry? I was fighting in Casablanca. Oh, over there in Casablanca. Was it pretty hot right around you? It was pretty hot. Is that right? You got it there just before you got into Casablanca? Just on the outskirts of Casablanca. Well, what'd you do? You dropped and lay right there in the open? Well, I dropped the first time, and then I got up and went on again until I got hit again. Uh-huh. And then you stay right there in the open? No, I had my sergeant and the private pull me over in the ditch where I laid until I got further aid. Pretty close down the bottom of the ditch, Harry, huh? So close I thought it was my own mother. Say, did the battle stop there, or did it pass on, or what? Well, it kept on going, but they scattered out more or less than it was. And it was all around you, though? Yes, it was all around. How long were you down there in that ditch? 5.5 hours. 5.5? Well, what were you thinking about? I've just wondered now what a fellow would think about. Well, you know this old saying in the World War I that a man get under artillery barrage, well, yeah, their hair would turn white. Well, that's what I was thinking of. You really was? That's what was on your mind? Well, it isn't white, and you haven't lost any of it either, old boy. You were pretty severely wounded, I know. How about the first aid? Well, the first aid, I applied a tourniquet on my leg and took sulfanilamide tablets. Yourself, huh? Yeah. Well, did you see any of your other buddies during that 5.5 hours? Well, my captain come along and asked me if I needed any aid, and I told him no, it was all right to go on, that there was more to take care of than just me. I see. Well, was he the only one? No, a little later on, a sergeant come by and another man out of my company and give me some water and more sulfanilamide tablets. Mm-hmm. Well, by George, they were looking after you right along. Well, now, Harry, how long was it after you were wounded before your leg had to be amputated? Well, it was approximately about 8 hours. About 8 hours? Yeah. And then these good old American doctors and nurses got hold of you, didn't they? Well, the French got a hold of me. At first, of course, they picked you up. And then you came home on a ship and... Yes, the Navy doctors took care of me till I reached home here. Okay, now, you've been in this hospital. You know this is one of the many, many Army hospitals. What do you got to say about it? Well, I think it's a fine hospital. What do you think about the doctors and the nurses? Well, doctors and nurses are all right, too. Yeah, when you said nurses, you smile extra broad. Hey, Harry, don't you sort of miss your buddies in the old outfit? Yes, I do. I wish I was back there, but a lot of people say that's a lot of baloney, but it isn't for me. Not for you, is it? Well, those boys are doing a good job, Harry. They'll finish what you helped them start and all like that. And by the way, Harry, of course, wears the Purple Heart. From myself and Vox Pop, we've got a couple of things we want to leave with you so you can remember the show. First of all, it's a Sassini pipe. You don't make them any better, they tell me. And a mixture of 5 or 6, 10 fine pipe tobaccos and a humidor to put it in. And there's a Ronson lighter with a kit to keep it going. That's one thing. And second, a self-winding, sweet second-hand Croton wristwatch, a serviceman's watch. And thank you a lot, Harry. Mighty glad to have you.
So that was the first guest. Our next guest is Private Hugh Alexander of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And this is Warren Hall. He's being interviewed by Warren Hall. And you'll see in the picture behind them is a WJSV CBS transmitter. This is a few months before WJSV became WTOP. And on the left, behind Hugh Alexander, you can actually see Harry Anderson's kickboard with the humidor, tobacco humidor that he just received. So a picture is worth 1,000 words. So let's hear from Hugh Alexander.
Hi, he's a great boy, Anderson. Folks, here's one man whose case shows what good care our Army takes care of its men. He's a member of a colored regiment of that great corps, the Fighting Engineers. He was infiltrated back from India, and he's standing here with his arm in a cast, but with his face in a big grin. 37 years old, and you'd never guess it, Private Hugh Alexander of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Hugh, what were you doing way out there in India?
Well, our job was to take care of the airports, fix the airports when the Japs would come over and bomb them. And the other job was to haul in supplies for the boys so they could eat.
Oh, well, you just ran the whole place you went to there.
Right, we run the place, the whole place.
Did the Japs try to pockmark the field?
Oh, yeah, they took plenty of shots at us.
Come over every day? Or
every day. Every day.
Well, then you had to go out and fill up the holes after them?
Yes, sir.
It was a nuisance, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
But you got it done right away?
Oh, yeah, right on the spot.
Well, it must have been a little work. Did you have good equipment to work with?
Oh, yeah, the best of equipment.
That's fine. Say, what did you do when the Japs came over?
Well, when the Japs come over, we were generally hit for a slit trench, either a T-patch, either we was any bamboo trees around handy, we would go for them.
Oh, bamboo made a good place to hide. Huh?
Yes, sir.
Well, did you see many Japs shot down?
Oh, yes, sir. Plenty of them.
How did you fellows feel when you saw a Jap fall?
Well, it was just like going to see a good ball game. See some of my homeboys knock a home run.
That's a good way to put it, all right. Is baseball one of your favorite sports?
Yes, sir. It's my favorite sport.
Ah. Well, look, how did you get this broken wing here?
Well, it happened this way. I was on Burma Road, and my truck broke down, so I asked the Indian driver to take me back into camp, tow me back in, so he hooked onto the truck with a tow chain, and he taken off like a P-40 plane. The roads was dusty and dark, so I couldn't hardly see. So we hit a curve, and I lost control of the truck, and the truck turned over about 60 foot down the bank and broke my arm in 2 places.
Oh, well, it was quite a trip back here from India. How did you come?
I came back by a clipper plane.
Ah, did you like flying?
That's my favorite way of traveling.
I'll bet. What kind of treatment are you getting?
I'm taking PT treatment and
What's
electric.
What's PT treatment?
Foot massage for my hand.
Mm-hmm.
And electric heat treatments every day.
Oh, fine. Say, do you have a furlough coming up soon?
Yes, sir.
What are you going to do when you get home?
Well, I'm going home with my wife. I'm going to get her to cook some good hot biscuits.
Yeah.
And her and I are going to the ball game.
Oh, to the ball game. Well, you know, we heard all about that from some of your pals. So Vox Pop and Bromo Seltzer sort of fixed it up so your wife can go along with you and fight about the ball game. We have a pass for her during your furlough. And to go with the hot biscuits, we have a nice big jar of honey. And for your little girl, a doll, a very pretty doll. And for the 2 boys, pitcher's glove and a catcher's mitt and a couple of baseballs for your 2 boys. And for you, we have a Croton self-winding serviceman's wristwatch with a sweet second hand. I think you'll like that. Good luck to you. Very, very much good luck to you, Alexander. Thanks very much.
Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to just go to the last interview that I have for you tonight. I don't have a photograph of him, but he does, a few days after the broadcast, he sent a letter to Parks Johnson, and I think you'll be very inspired by particularly inspired by his story.
And now, folks, to Miss Margaret Lauer, who is the Red Cross field director here, and for Mars Boys, we want at this time to present to you, all of you fellows here and all around the wards who may be listening, this great big new record player for your recreation hall here. We know we found you need one, and we hope you enjoy it. On to me. I'm feeling pretty good, folks, about the remarkable work that our Army Medical Corps is doing and the way these boys are getting along. Aren't you out there? But here's another soldier. He's another fighting American. He volunteered for the Rangers and he trained with the commandos over in England. Folks, from Baltimore, Maryland, 25-year-old Corporal Murray Salkin. Oh, the boys all know you, Murray. Say, Murray, I'm wondering just why did you join the Rangers?
Well, for a couple of reasons. But about the main one was I would have loved to have gotten one of our friends at the point of either a pistol or a rifle.
You really were after him, huh?
Definitely.
You really felt that way about it.
Oh, I had a good reason to.
Well, Murray, you train pretty hard over there. But I know that commando training is nothing to sneeze at. Your muscles are like steel. I can feel them as I have my arms around you here. But can you tell me, did you go on that Dieppe raid?
Well, in a way, yes. But
why do you hesitate to talk about it?
What happened is I didn't get off the boat.
Oh, you didn't get off the boat? Well, you probably had a very important job aboard the boat. I understand that you didn't tell your mother about that for quite a little while.
Well, I was afraid that she would worry about it. And
you just didn't want her to know?
I didn't think it was.
What
now it's all over, well, it's probably the best thing to do.
That's right. What gave you a wound, Murray?
Well, a bomb exploded unexpectedly.
And right on, yeah. And it knocked you completely out, I guess.
Yeah, but I was pretty lucky because a couple of feet away from me, a good friend of mine got, he got
didn't come back,
pretty bad. No, he didn't.
Very, very serious, I take it, wasn't it, at the time?
Well, there were quite a few casualties.
Well, I mean your wound.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think so, no.
Oh, you don't think so?
No.
Well, didn't they have a rather hard job pulling you through there on the field?
Well, I was lucky in the fact that I was able to receive pretty quick medical treatment.
Pretty quick, of course. Well, that's what you always do when you're in Uncle Sam's army.
Well,
you're right on the job. Well, Murray, was your best girl glad to see you come home?
You mean my mother?
Your mother's your best girl. Yes, boy, we know. We rather thought that she was your best girl, and as you know, your mother is here right behind us, and I'd like to ask Miss Salkin if you won't come up to the microphone and join us. This is a pretty good, pretty fine soldier, this big boy of yours, Miss Salkin.
I love him to death.
Murray, I don't blame you. I think that she is a very sweet best girl. What do you got to say?
Well, with that, I agree with you.
They're right here in the microphone because we want the folks up there in Baltimore to hear it. Miss Salkin, you've been to see Murray quite a little bit since he's been here, haven't you?
Almost 2 and 3 times a week, every chance I get.
Well, you've had a chance to see this Army hospital, which is just typical of Army hospitals all over. What have you got to say to the mothers who either have sons in Army hospitals or may have them there?
Well, they're taking very good care of him. I know that. And he's happy that he has the attention and he's near home.
Uh-huh.
And if we'd be more than happy if he had the sight of one eye, his whole family would be tickled to death about that.
Yeah, well, Murray,
I hope the doctors will be able to do something for him.
Well, we hadn't told the folks, had we, Murray, what had really happened to you. You tell them.
Well, seems that I'm blind, but in my estimation, it's no handicap.
That's the way. Why do you say that, Murray?
Well, I seem to have found entirely new fields to conquer.
You've got a new world ahead of you, haven't you?
That's exactly.
Well, what are you going to do when you get out of the hospital?
Well, I happen to be very fortunate. The fact that my trade can accept me back. I was a salesman for the Cat's Paw Rubber Heel Company.
That's all.
And
you mean they have their job for you?
Yes, definitely. I heard that they're waiting for me to come back.
And you got your job when you're ready for it?
That's right.
How are you going to do that? With a car?
Well, they'll supply me with a driver and someone to put up the advertising, and all I have to do is use my brain and my mouth.
Well, folks, I think you can tell as well as I can. I wish you could see Ms. Hawken and her son Murray, that here are people who are looking forward, not backward. And Murray, the best of luck to you. I know you got it in you, boy, because everybody here can look at you and tell it. And we want you to have, from ourselves and Vox Pop, 2 or 3 things. First of all, is a Braille book of prayer, which I know you'd like to have.
Wow.
Wait a minute, we'll give it to you a little bit later back here. And then there's that talking book machine, you know, where you can put records in the machine and the reading is done to you by finished readers. And then for your mother, your best girl, a console home radio. And thank you very much and good luck to both of you.
So, so that was Murray Salkin. And what we have here on the screen is a letter that he sent to Parks Johnson a couple days after the broadcast to thank him for the broadcast, but also to tell him that that Philip Morris heard the interview and had invited him onto their show and offered him a seeing eye dog, which he actually turns down. And as a result, he's been interviewed by reporters from the Baltimore newspapers. And so the show, I think that's another example how the show contributed to the war effort. So let me get back to. Then after the broadcast, Edward Kirby, who was the head of the radio branch of the United States Army, sent a letter of thanks as well. Well, in closing, I would like to make one note about Parks Johnson's character here, and the fact you've seen photographs, you've seen letters, you've seen notebook entries, and in 1937, Parks Johnson was interviewed by the publicity department at NBC, and one of the questions was, "What is one of your weaknesses?" And his answer was, "I am cursed with the habit of keeping exact and accurate records of any and anything I do. I know the name, address, and have a fairly accurate picture of practically every person I've ever interviewed." So I think that kind of bears out what we've seen here. But before I do that, I do want to, as a follow-up to Karl's presentation. Karl, are you still there?
He may be muted. He may be on mute.
Oh, okay. Well, Karl, if you are there, I want to note that
I'm still here. Go ahead.
Oh, you are still there. Okay.
Yep.
One of the ways, one of the kinds of broadcasts that Vox Pop did, and they would frequently attend Hollywood. So in 1940, they attended the premiere of The Mark of Zorro and interviewed, as you see here on this is the note. What you see here is the notebook, Parks Johnson's notebook entry for that broadcast. They're broadcasting from Cincinnati, Tyrone Power's hometown. They interviewed Larry Clinton, orchestra leader, Bill Gallagher, who was Tyrone Power's bodyguard. They interviewed Tyrone Power and his wife, Annabella. And here they are. Here he is interviewing Tyrone Power here's Parks Johnson interviewing Tyrone Power at the premiere. You see in Tyrone Power's hands, looks like a dollar bill. And this is a period in the show's history when it wasn't really an interview show, it was a quiz show. And so they would give out cash prizes for correct answers. And so
let's see.
So I just thought that would be an interesting little footnote relating to our previous presentation. In closing, let me see slideshow. There we are. I'd just like to thank you for having me back. And here's my email address if anyone would like to contact me. And where I'm always looking for information about this program, either people's memories of it, or if it was a part of your family's history. Most of the people who were interviewed on the show have passed, certainly, even some of the children that they interviewed. But I'm sure there are other stories and resources out there, and recordings and photographs out there that I've yet to find, and I'm always interested in learning more. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael. This is really wonderful, wonderfully informative. It's a great program. Does anyone have any questions or observations for Michael? Dennis Stevens is waving frantically. You're on mute, Dennis. Let's see if we can get Dennis unmuted. Let's see, Dennis Stevens. I just sent you a prompt to unmute, if that helps. I can send you another one.
Michael, if you could end the share screen, that would be helpful.
Sure. Yep, I can do that.
Thank you.
And Dennis, you're still muted in spite of asking you not to unmute. Are you getting a message on your screen saying unmute? And are you responding to that message? Well, maybe while Dennis works on unmuting himself, someone else might have a question or something. Anyone else? Frank Morgan. Okay.
First, Michael, thank you very much for making the presentation tonight, but I also appreciate the program that you selected. I thought that the troops that they interviewed were tremendous in light of the injuries that they had incurred, to have the attitudes that they seem to have, and just remarkable. And Warren Hull doing the interview with them, or the other gentleman, they did a remarkable job of keeping it upbeat, even though they did ask them about the injuries and how the injuries were incurred. So it was, really a wonderful program that you selected. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Frank. Edgar, did I see, is that your hand, Edgar?
Yes, Edgar.
Yes, it is, Michael. And thank you for a wonderful presentation. And I sent you a short message in the chat to you.
Yes, I saw that. Yes, thank you.
Yes, my question is on the last one, Aaron Murray Sorkin, or I'm not sure I got the name right. Are you doing research on him or others? For long after the war. In other words, after Parks Johnson's archives. Have you tried to contact any of them, or because some of them could still be alive, and I just was curious of what you may have found, or if that's in your plans.
No, you're absolutely right, Edgar. I have spent quite a bit of time, since we have so many clear records of who was interviewed on the show in those notebooks. I've compiled a spreadsheet, a 3,000 interviewee spreadsheet. There are over 3,000 men, women, and children they interviewed in the course of that show that we know of from his, and I've done research on them. Not all of them haven't done, I found, for many of them, I found their birth and death dates and what happened after the war. And so it's just, using resources like Ancestry.com and newspapers.com and other genealogical research tools. And it's so amazingly immersive and fun to see and we've been doing Facebook postings here, about some of these stories. And several years ago, I did have contact with the nephew of Salkin.
Oh, yes.
And so I think I sent him a copy of that recording. So that's just one example. And but absolutely, these men and women get 5 minutes of quote unquote 5 minutes of fame, but they give you enough to wonder what happened next. Like any good story, you want to have, or a good character in a story or in history, you want to know what happens next. And so it's been fascinating to follow that. So if anyone would like to look at what I've done, I will happy to send Frank or someone a copy of that spreadsheet, and you can explore it. The spreadsheet documents the broadcasts, the interviewees, their hometowns, their age, their background. And so there may be one of your hometowns,
Oh yeah, I'd love to look at it and see.
I'd be happy to, to share that.
Oh, that's wonderful. We'll keep up the good work, and thank you again for making the presentation tonight.
Thank you, Edgar.
Rob Farr has his hand up.
Well, I just had an observation. 99% of what we hear and see on radio, television, and movies are professional actors or announcers speaking. We rarely get to hear the way real people spoke, and this is an archive about just the way that non-professionals spoke. And in that sense, I think it's very valuable.
Well, and I'm so, now that's absolutely, even Parks Johnson, who by 1943 had been on radio for 11 years, he still has his Georgia twang.
Mhm.
He grew up in Georgia, and he still has that really deep Southern drawl to him. And of course, Warren Hull's from Connecticut, so he has a Connecticut accent. But also, I'm so grateful that Parks Johnson had the foresight to commission these photographs to be taken, because there are over 2,000 photographs showing these broadcasts and showing the people being interviewed and the locations and the artifacts of the gifts they're receiving and the clothes, the uniforms, the civilian, and it just becomes this incredible window, literally a window into that period. One of the broadcasts we have literally has 30 photographs associated with it, so you could practically watch the broadcast while listening to it just by using the photographs. So, but yeah, Rob, you definitely touched upon one of the reasons why this show has me so enthralled, because of the cultural evidence it has.
Mhm. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Dennis, okay. Vox Pop was the call sign of the command post. Oh, of Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. Okay. Okay. There you go. Voice of the people. So that's great. That's great.
Thank you for that,
Yeah.
Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis.
See, when all else fails, creativity always wins. Thinking outside the box. Other questions? Other people? I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Well, I would like to raise my hand. May I raise my hand?
Certainly. Certainly.
I just want to kind of comment back on what Frank had said about how inspiring these stories were, and how he was impressed by the perspective of the soldiers who had been wounded and how they responded. I was particularly, every time I listen, I've heard this broadcast many, many times, but every time I listen to Murray Salkin's interview, and when he says, "This isn't a handicap. This is just new worlds for me to conquer. I have to spend the next 5 minutes getting the lump out of my throat," and having his mother there. There is mothers play a big part in this story of Vox Pop, and it was often a gift that they would give the servicemen after the interview, a phone call to their mothers at home. And in 1943, they actually went so far as to have their 3 mothers in studio at the microphone while their 3 sons were overseas in London. Wow. And to talk to them by phone. Now, in Johnson's notebook for that interview, next to the mother, is the serviceman's name was Francis Buzz O'Reilly. And next to his name is an asterisk. And the asterisk says that he was killed in action not long after that broadcast. And in my research, I discovered that was the last time his mother ever spoke to him. Wow. Because he was a B-17 pilot, and he was killed in action, not like maybe a month after that broadcast. And so that broadcast was the last time she ever spoke to him. And the extra little twist there, she was already a widow at that time. Her husband had died in 1940. And so here in 1943, she'd already lost her husband. Now she's lost her son. And for the rest of the war, she spent going on war bond drives. And so I think when we think of World War II servicemen and women, we can't forget the families. The mothers who sent their sons and their husbands to war. The brothers whose brothers went to war. The sisters whose brothers or sisters went to war. So I think that's another thing that Vox Pop documents, is what was going on the home front, not just on the battlefront. And that's part of what I want to do, is get this information out there to the veterans community, to the old-time radio community. And I think there's so much gold here to share.
There certainly is. That's fascinating. Thank you, Michael, for that additional insight into the impact of the show. I think that's that. Remembering the families and the mothers, that type of thing. So I've got a lump in my throat now. Thanks, Michael.
You're welcome.
No, it is a wonderful program, and I have a feeling you could come back multiple times with other interviews and other insights into that. I mean, just pursuing the mother's aspect could be a whole other presentation. Perhaps. I don't know. But I know it's a lot of work, and you've put a lot of work into it and a lot of heart into it. And I think that is a wonderful gift to all of us. So thank you so much. Any other final questions, observations, curiosities? Anybody?
Just one thing, Wendy. I wanted to show Michael this. It's a let me show it. It's a Veterans Library, Veterans History Project, Library of Congress. And are you familiar with that? That's recording oral histories of veterans along with photographs and documents. And I'm wondering if there's a way to cross-pollinate your work and the archives with the Library of Congress. I would think that would be an amazing source to share or to link or something.
Well, Edgar, you're absolutely right. And in fact, one of the things I'm working on is sort of cross-referencing my spreadsheet with their spreadsheet to see if there are any cross where maybe they've interviewed the same people. So in either sense, that is definitely on my goal. One of my goals is to reach out to them and say, hey, we've got, I've got some additional information. Especially, that's why I want to find out if there are any if they've interviewed the same people. So I can say, hey, I have this extra resource here for you.
Absolutely.
But absolutely, you're absolutely right, Edgar. That's a great resource. And it's
well, you're
if you
ahead of
haven't
the
been
curve.
on the site, it's a great site. It's very well organized, very user friendly to navigate. So,
Gotcha. Well, you're ahead of the curve. So, but as usual, I expect that from you. So fabulous.
Well done. You have not been idle in the years we lost touch with you. Thank you, Michael, very, very much. So if there are no more questions or curiosities, I want to, again, thank you very, very much, Michael. And I'm sure many of you were dying of curiosity to know the answers to the quiz, which our mistress has answered for us, or has posed us the questions that she has posed us. And so we can now pivot over to Miss Stevens again with the answers.
Excellent. All right. I gave you plenty of time to participate in the poll, so no excuses. I'm ending the poll now. All right. I'm going to share the poll results so you can see how your fellow classmates did, and we'll see how we all did. Can you see it? Great. Okay. All right, class, let's see how well we did with 9 names and a place, courtesy of our quiz master, Frank. Number 1. Wilms Herbert played Sergeant Otis on Richard Diamond Private Detective. What was his surname? Oh, was it Dum Dum? No, but someone picked it. Was it Edelman, Ludlum, or Feldman? We were kind of spread out all over the place, but the correct answer is C, Ludlum. C, Ludlum. Number 2, the Lone Ranger had several announcers over the years, and who of the following was not an announcer for the series? Well, everybody at least got one vote, but in this case, the majority did win the day. The correct answer is D. J. Micheal was not an announcer for the Lone Ranger. Number 3. Dr. Kildare practiced at which of the following hospitals? Nobody thought Hoskins. Nobody thought Boston. Most of us said Blair. A few of us picked Central, and the majority is correct again. Dr. Kildare practiced at Blair General. Blair General. C. Blair General. Number 4. Several played Pancho on the Cisco Kid, but who did not from this group? Everybody got a vote again, at least one. The majority went for Mel Blanc, but you did not study, class. And now you have homework to listen to the Cisco Kid. Because even I knew that one, only because Dad really likes that show. So the correct answer is D. Parley Bear. Parley Bear did not play Pancho, but Harry Lang, Mel Blanc, and Lou Merrill all did. D. Parley Bear was the correct answer. And now you have homework. Number 5. Classically trained actor John Todd played Tonto on The Lone Ranger, but what role did he occasionally fill in on The Green Hornet? Again, everybody at least got a vote. Did he play the city editor, one of the reporters, or the police commissioner? Well, he played Mike Axford, reporter. B. B is the correct answer. Number 6. Before she was Samantha's befuddled aunt on Bewitched, this actress was a regular in Mr. Peepers, which I have a lot of questions, but we'll get to those later. Who was she? Oh, a lot of us went for Agnes Moorehead. I had a feeling that Frank was trying to trick us, and he did. Remember, class, there will always be an answer where they're trying to trick you. There will always be an answer where they're trying to trick you. However, that is not the correct answer. The correct answer is B. Marion Lorne. B. Marion Lorne. Number 7. Audiences were surprised when this actor appeared on screen in Love Story without a hairpiece. Oh! Who was this matinee idol who starred in Meet Mr. McNutley? Nobody thought it was Chester Morris. He got no votes. We were kind of split between John Garfield or John Marley, but Ray Milland got the most votes, and majority does win. D. Ray Milland is the correct answer. D. Number 8. This popular kids program is one that started on TV and then moved to radio. Oh, everybody at least got a vote again. But this one is one they were not trying to trick you. Sometimes you do go for the obvious answer. The correct answer is A. Tom Corbett Space Cadet. Number 9. Hubert Updike was a character on the Alan Young Show. Who played Hubert? Alan Reed didn't get any votes, but Conread did get one. We were kind of split between Arnold staying, but Jim Backus got the most votes, and it looks like some of us did do some studying. I'm very proud of the majority of the class. The correct answer is D, Jim Backus. And our final question. On Barry Craig, confidential investigator, who played the lead? Barry Craig. Nobody thought it was Robert Rockwell, but we were split between Wally Mayer, William Gargan, and Jeff Chandler. Let's see. The most of us went with B, William Gargan, and that is correct. B, William Gargan is the correct answer. Well, I am very proud of the majority winning out on our quiz. Nice job, class. You still have homework, so too bad, so sad. You still have homework to do, but I look forward to seeing your improvement on our next quiz.
Thank you again, Miss Stevens. So we all know that we have homework to do. Appreciate that very much. Always valuable. You keep us honest. So now we are coming to the end of the regularly scheduled public program, and we will move into our business meetings.